champagne didn't have as many calories as other beverages. And so every weekend I would stop off and get a bottle of champagne. And then my husband and I would drink champagne and eat over buttered, highly flavored popcorn with, like herbs and spices on top of the popcorn, until I weighed myself and figured out that she was just joking with me about the caloric intake. But no, this is very good.
I'm glad you like. Thank you for sharing that story. That's funny. Yeah, champagne is. I mean, it's the same amount of calories you'll have in a glass of any wine, really, and maybe even a little more if it's topped off with some sugar. But yeah, that's you were doing the right pairing, which is great. The buttery popcorn. That's another thing that goes really well with champagne.
Yeah. Because I had not had lunch yet, I actually had some apples and cheese and grabbed a couple of pretzels in between.
Apples and cheese are a great pairing as well. I mean, I'm telling you, you can pair champagne with anything, like literally anything, and you're going to enjoy it. But I do think burgers, yeah, because the fat in the burger. I mean, fat, and you have cheese in the burger too, for sure. Yeah.
Nice.
It's versatile. It's the most versatile. Champagne and Riesling are the two most versatile wines, I guess, out there, right? I say Riesling because Riesling typically has a little bit of sweetness to it. If you get it from Germany, from the Mosel region, it's going to have a little bit of residual sugar there, so it's going to be a little sweet. But that sweetness, you can pair it with a spicy Thai. Go get a really highly acidic Riesling from Mosel, from Germany, and eat some spicy Thai with it, and you're going to be blown away. It is like the perfect pairing in the world. I do it all the time. I love it.
Wow. This is wonderful.
Does anyone else have any questions about champagne, or who else wants to go?
I had a quick question because somebody mentioned Veuve earlier, and I think that's just like, it's kind of my go-to for celebrations. Like it's like the thing that you bring to a party, and I feel like this tastes very similar. How would you compare the two?
Great question. So I think they're fairly similar. I do think you're right. I actually really like Veuve too. I think of the base bottlings, it's a very good one, and it's made ironically, it's now owned by LVMH, which Moet is also owned by LVMH, and I'm not a big Moet fan. I think Veuve actually might be a little more nuttier. It might have those kind of like that brioche, those secondary aromas I was talking about, and even tertiary aromas more so than this. I think this is a little bit greener than Veuve. And quick little story about Veuve. So Veuve means widow in French. Veuve Clicquot was the widow of a famous winemaker, producer, and she took over the reins when her husband died. And she actually introduced the method of capping the wine. So she introduced the method of aging the wine on the lees and capping it, and then popping it out with freezing it and popping it out. She is attributed with having created that. So there are actually a lot of famous women in champagne history. You'll see Veuve on a lot of bottles. Veuve Clicquot is not the only one. So if you're interested in that stuff, I'd encourage you looking into it and just seeing the history of champagne, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's really cool.
Awesome, thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad you like Veuve. It's a great bottle. And
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I'm the girl that will get Prosecco all the time. What is the difference between champagne and Prosecco?
Great question. Primarily how it's made. So the champagne is made in the traditional method, the method we were talking about earlier, where there's a secondary fermentation in the bottle. So the bottle, you have a still wine, and then you put the wine into the bottle and you top it off with a little bit more yeast and some sugar, and then you cap it, and then there's a secondary fermentation which creates the CO2, right? CO2 is released during fermentation. The Prosecco method is the tank method, where instead of doing that secondary fermentation in the bottle, they do it in a big, massive tank. That's the primary difference. But then Prosecco also comes from the Veneto region of Italy. It has to come from the Veneto region. It's also made with different grapes. Prosecco is made with Glera. I think it's called Glera the grape. So it has to be made in a specific way. The Charmat tank method, it has to be from the Veneto region, and it has to be made with Glera.
Then can you also add on how Cava is different?
I'm glad you asked, actually. Oh, guys, if you're looking for great value, Cava. Go get some Cava. Cava is $15 to $20 a bottle. If you want to find similar to champagne quality in sparkling wine, I think Cava is the place to go. Cava is made in the same way. It just comes from the Penedès region. Primarily, there are other places that produce Cava in Spain, but primarily comes from the Penedès region in Spain. It's made in that traditional method, and it's made with different grapes. The grapes are indigenous to Spain. One of them is called Zarello. They're really hard to pronounce, and I'm not going to go into all three grapes that are mostly used, but that's the main one. So basically, it just boils down to place, grape, and method, primarily. But yeah, try Cava. It's awesome. You can't go wrong with Cava. Does anyone else have any questions, or should I call someone else out here? Who wants to be next?
Yeah, I actually have a question. This is Kelly Brensel. I was wondering what champagne makes best mimosas.
Ooh. Well, I mean, I think it's subjective. I think you
All
got
of them.
anything bubbly. I honestly, I would recommend using Prosecco or Cava for mimosas. I try not to be a wine snob, but I am a little bit snobby in that respect. I like to drink champagne as is. But I would just experiment, by yourself. Just try as many as you can. Try a Cava. Just go try a Cava and see how that is. And if you like it, that should be your go-to for sure.
And then I have a question. Cava, like usually it comes like you have to take it off like you would like a beer. So does that mean they just don't freeze it, or am I making that up? Like when I've gotten Cava, you kind of just have like take it off with the bottle opener. Does that mean that that bottle wasn't frozen for that cork process?
I'd love to see what you were drinking. I don't think I've ever had a Cava that's come that way. I mean, I'm sure it exists. I just never have seen it. This is the primary way. Cava is made in the traditional method. They cork it afterwards. They dose it as well with a little bit of sugar, and they have the same sweetness scale. So, all right, let's talk about the wine a little bit more. I'm gonna call on. Let's see. Who's here? Rebecca. Hi, nice to meet you.
I was about to be called on.
Remember, don't be nervous. Everyone, no one's wrong here. It's
I'm
whatever.
good. I basically have been agreeing with everything everyone else has been saying. It is crisper and smoother than other champagnes, Proseccos, Cavas, etc. that I've had. And I definitely got that green apple note. The sweetness, when I first started drinking wine in general, it was all the Rieslings and Moscatos, like juice. Because that's what my parents drank. But then obviously I've adulted to drier stuff. And this is a really good balance. And it's not that acidic burn that some champagnes seem to have. So I really enjoyed this.
Great. That makes me super happy. Thanks.
Question while I'm here. How long can you let it, quote unquote, age unopened?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm of the persuasion that you should drink wine if you have it. I mean, I am aging a few bottles, but for the most part, I think you should drink wine when you have it. That said, champagne can age for a very, very long time. There's a great documentary called Somm. It's a series, actually. I'm sure some of you have seen it. It's on Netflix, or it was on Netflix, actually. It's not anymore. But anyway, there's this scene in Somm where they go to the Renart house, right? Champagne house. And the director there walks down in the cellar and sabers open a bottle of 1969 champagne. So at that point, that was a 45 or 50-year-old bottle of champagne, right? That's crazy long time. I wouldn't recommend aging a bottle of Paul Roger that long. I don't know if it would last, but if it's stored the right way, if it's a balanced wine, if it has enough acidity, you're going to be able to age wine for decades, quite frankly. and it will develop other flavors and aromas as it does it.
And what is that proper way to store it?
So ideally you want it to be 55 degrees. That's why the cellar temperature is so great, because that temperature is not changing. It's always a constant 55 degrees underground. And you want it hopefully to be, you want it to be dark, of course, but you also want it to be hopefully a little bit more humid. Humidity will help with the cork. So the reason wine ages is because air seeps in through the cork over time. Very, very minute, tiny little amounts of air seep in through the cork, and they'll change the chemical makeup of the wine. So ideally you want to have humidity so the cork doesn't become too porous and let in too much oxygen. Does anyone here store wine? Is anyone saving a good bottle? I see.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose.
There was a bottle of, I don't know, apple wine or something that we bought drunkenly at a wine festival and haven't opened it because it sounds gross sober. So that's been sitting on the rack for a while.
Try it. What do you have to lose? You know?
Always makes angry out of it.
So is it cider if it's apple wine?
I think it's just a Pennsylvania sweet kind of
Interesting.
made with apples wine.
Interesting.
Hey, Alex.
What's up?
Short term, like when you bring champagne home, does it make sense to put everything in the fridge, or should you just chill it right before you're ready to drink it?
I think it's good to go in the fridge. Yeah. If wine gets above 82 degrees or 83 degrees for a long period of time, it can turn really quickly. It can be bad. So ideally, if you have it, you're going to drink it in the next like 2 weeks or something like that, or even sooner, just throw it in the fridge and it'll be fine. You can even store it in the fridge for a year, quite frankly.
Oh, I didn't know.
Oh yeah.
Should they be turned flat so that the cork, or horizontally so that the cork is moisturized?
100%.
I drank too much. No, sorry.
No, that's absolutely true. The reason why bottles are stored on their side is so the cork doesn't dry out and then, get more porous and let in a bunch of oxygen. So if you see the bottles standing upright in these wine stores, be careful if they're old ones. I don't know if I'd buy them.
So if I can't drink this entire bottle by myself, but I'm doing a pretty good job, how long can I store it? And what is the best cap to put on it?
So
I have faith in you, Linda.
I think you should just drink it all.
I'm going to blame it on my last integrated team call.
As you should. So you can, if you don't have a stopper, so I have this amazing wine tool called Vacuvine. It's $10 on Amazon. It's just this little, I guess suction thing you put in the top of the neck of the bottle, and then you suck the air out of the bottle. I've had wines last 2 weeks using it. Like it sucks all the air out. So it's good as long as you keep checking it, because sometimes air seeps in. But if you don't have that, go ahead and just throw the cork back into it, or since it's champagne, it's expanded, you can't throw this cork in. Put some foil on top of it and just close it, make it airtight. Put it in the fridge.
Okay.
Fridge, because the temperature will help it last for a while. Probably a couple days, I'd say. It'll probably lose a little bit of effervescence, but don't be afraid of champagne without effervescence. It just means you're drinking a really good still wine. That's all.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's see who else here. John, Mr. DeGeorge.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions? I'm sorry that you don't have the bottle.
No worries. So, what we've all talked about, like pairing it with food and what's good for mimosas. If you were to have like another beverage, right? What would you pair with champagne? What is another beverage? Like you start off with champagne, or you just toasted with champagne. What would you move into, or would you end with champagne?
That's a really great question. So I pair my reds with my whites. No, you typically when you're tasting, or if you're just drinking over a night, you want to start off with the lighter wines, and then as the heavier courses come out, you know, move on to the heavier wines. So start off with a champagne, then move to another white,